Willie's Tale by Sir Walter Scott. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Tony Addison. Wandering Willie's Tale by Sir Walter Scott. Honest folks like me, how do you ken whether I am honest or what I am? I may be the devil himself for what ye ken, for he has power to come disguised like an angel of light, and besides he is a prime fiddler. He played a sonata to Corelli, ye ken. There was something odd in this speech, and the tone in which it was said. It seemed as if my companion was not always in his constant mind, or that he was willing to try if he could frighten me. I laughed at the extravagance of his language, however, and asked him in reply if he was fool enough to believe that the foul fiend would play so silly a masquerade. "Ye ken little about it, said the old man, shaking his head and beard and knitting his brows. "I could tell you something about that." What his wife mentioned of his being a tale-teller as well as a musician now occurred to me, and, as you know, I like tales of superstition. I begged to have a specimen of his talent as we went along. "It is very true," said the blind man, "that when I am tired of scraping theorem or singing ballants, I whiles make a tale serve the turn among the country bodies, and I have some fearsome anes that make the old colleens shake on the settle, and the bits of bairns skirl on their minnies out frae their beds. But this that I am going to tell you was a thing that befell in our ain house in my father's time. That is, my father was then a Haplin's callant, and I tell it to you that it may be a lesson to you that about a young thoughtless chap what ye draw up wi on a lonely road, for muckle was the dule and care that came of it to my gudesire." He commenced his tale accordingly in a distinct narrative tone of voice, which he raised and depressed with considerable skill, at times sinking almost into a whisper, and turning his clear but sightless eyeballs upon my face, as if it had been possible for him to witness the impression which his narrative made upon my features. I will not spare a syllable of it, although it be of the longest, so I make a dash, and begin. Ye mun have heard of Sir Robert Redgauntlet of that ilk, who lived in these parts before the dear years. But country were lang mind him, and our fathers used to draw breath thick if ever they heard him named. He was out with a Highlandman in Montrose's time, and again he was in the hills wi Glencairn in the 1652, and said when King Charles II came in, wha was in sick favour as the Laird of Redgauntlet. He was knighted at Lunnon Court with the king's ain sword, and being a red-hot prelatist, he came down here rampaging like a lion, with commission of lieutenancy and of lunacy, for what I ken, to put down all the Whigs and Covenanters in the country. Wild work they made of it, for the Whigs were as dour as the Cavaliers were fierce, and it was which should first tire the other. Redgauntlet was aye for the strong hand, and his name is kenned as wide in the country as Claverhouses or Tamdallyells. Glen, nor dargle, nor mountain, nor cave could hide the poor hill folk when Redgauntlet was out with bugle and bloodhound after them, as if they had been sae many deer. And troth, when they found them, They didna make muckle mair ceremony than a Highlandman wi' a roebuck. It was just, will ye tak the test? If not, make ready, present, fire! And there lay the recusant. Far and wide was Sir Robert hated and feared. Men thought he had a direct compact with Satan, that he was proof against steel, and that bullets happed up his buckle like hailstones from a hearth, that he had a mare that would turn a hair on the side of Carriffragons, a precipitous side of a mountain in Moffatdale, and muckle to the same purpose of whilk mair anon. The best blessing they word on him was deal scalp wi' Redgauntlet. He was nae a bad master to his ain folk, though, and was weel enough liked by his tenants. And as for the lackeys and troopers that rade out wi' him to the persecutions, as the Whigs called those killing times, they would hae drunken themselves blind to his health at any time. Now you are to ken that my good sire lived on Redgauntlet's ground. They called the place Primrose Knowe. We had lived on the ground and under the Redgauntlets since the riding days and long before. It was a pleasant bit, and I think the air is clearer and fresher there than anywhere else in the country. It's all deserted now, and I sat on the broken dirt cheek 3 days since, and was glad I couldna see the plight the place was in. But that's all wide of the mark. There dwelt my good sire, Steenie Steenson, a rambling, rattling chiel he had been in his young days, and could play weel on the pipes. He was famous at hoopers and girders. Oh, Cumberland couldna touch him at Chucky Latin, and he had the finest finger for the backlog between Berwick and Carlisle. The like of Steenie was never set that they made wigs of, and so he became a Tory, as they called it, which we now call Jacobites, just out of a kind of necessity, that he might belong to some side or other. He had nae ill will to the Whig bodies, and liked little to see the blood run, though, being obliged to follow Sir Robert in hunting and hoisting, watching and warding, he saw muckle mischief, and maybe did some that he couldna avoid. Now, Steenie was a kind of favourite with his master, and kenned all the folk about the castle, and was often sent for to play the pipes when they were at their merriment. Old Dougal MacCallum the butler, that had followed Sir Robert through good and ill, thick and thin, pool and stream, was specially fond of the pipes, and I gave my good sire his good word with the laird, for Dougal could turn his master round his finger. Weel, round came the Revolution, and it had like to hae broken the hearts baith of Dougal and his master. But the change was not altogether so great as they feared and other folk thought for. The Whigs made an unco crawling what they would do with their old enemies, and in special with Sir Robert Redgauntlet. But there were o'er many great folks dipped in the same doings to make a spick and span new world. So Parliament passed it o'er easy, and Sir Robert, bating that he was held to hunting foxes instead of Covenanters, remained just the man he was. His revel was as good, and his hall as weel lighted as ever it had been, though maybe he lacked the fines of the nonconformists that used to come to stock his larder and cellar, for it is certain he began to be keener about the rents than his tenants used to find him before. and they behoved to be prompt to the rent or else the laird wasna pleased. And he was sick and awesome body that naebody cared to anger him, for the oaths he swore, and the rage that he used to get into, and the looks that he put on made men sometimes think him a devil incarnate. Weel, my gudesire was nae manager. No that he was a very great misguider, but he hadna the saving gift, and he got 2 terms rent in arrear. He got the first brush at Whitsunday put o'er wi' fair word and piping, but when Martinmas came, there was a summons from the ground officer to come with your rent on a day precise, or else Steenie behoved to flit. Sair work he had to get the siller, but he was weel friended, and at last he got the hale scraped together, 1,000 marks. The maist of it was from a neighbour they called Laurie Laprick, a sly tod. Laurie had wealth of gear, could hunt with a hound, and run with a hare, and be Whig or Tory, saint or sinner, as the wind stood. He was a professor in the Revolution world, but he liked an RSO of the world, and a tune on the pipes weel enough for to buy time. And Bonat, he thought he had good security for the siller. He lent my gudesire o'er the stocking at Primrose Knob. Away trots my gudesire to Redgauntlet Castle, wi' a heavy purse and a light heart, glad to be out of the laird's danger. Weel, the first thing he learned at the castle was that Sir Robert had fretted himself into a fit of the gout, because he did no appear before 12 o'clock. It was not altogether for sake of the money, Dougal thought, but because he did not like to part with my gudesire off the ground. Dougal was glad to see Steenie, and brought him into the great oak parlour, and there sat the laird, his leesome lane, excepting that he had beside him a great ill-favoured jackanape that was a special pet of his. A cankered beast it was, and mony an ill-natured trick it played. Ill to please it was, and easily angered, ran about the hale castle, chattering and rowling, and pinching and biting folk, specially before ill weather or disturbance in the state. Sir Robert called it Major Weir, after the warlock that was burnt, and few folk liked either the name or the conditions of the creature. They thought there was something in it by ordinary, and my gudesire was not just easy in mind when the door shut on him, and he saw himself in the room with naebody but the laird, Dougal MacCallum, and the Major, a thing that hadna chanced to him before. Sir Robert sat, or I should say lay, in a great armchair, with his grand velvet gown, and his feet on a cradle, for he had both gout and gravel, and his face looked as gashed and ghastly as Satan's. Major Weir sat opposite to him, in a red-laced coat, and the laird's wig on his head, and I, as Sir Robert girned wi' pain, the jackanape girned too, like a sheep's head between a pair of tongues. An ill-fared, fearsome couple they were. The laird's buff coat was hung on a pin behind him, and his broadsword and his pistols within reach, for he keepit up the auld fashion of having the weapons ready, and a horse saddled day and night, just as he used to do when he was able to loup on horseback and sway after any of the hill folk he could get spearings of. Some said it was for fear of the Whigs taking vengeance, but I judge it was just his old custom. He wasna gain not fear anything. The rental book, with its black cover and brass clasps, was lying beside him, and a book of skullduggery songs was put betwixt the leaves to keep it open at the place where it bore evidence against the good man of Primrose Knowe, as behind the hand with his mails and duties. Sir Robert gave my gudesire a look, as if he would have withered his heart in his bosom. Ye mun ken he had a way of bending his brows that men saw the visible mark of a horseshoe in his forehead, deep dinted, as if it had been stamped there. "Ah, ye come light-handed, ye son of a tomb whistle," said Sir Robert. "Zounds up ye are!" My gudesire, with as good a countenance as he could put on, made a leg, and placed the bag of money on the table with a dash, like a man that does something clever. The laird drew it to him hastily. "Is all here, Steenie, man?" "Your honour will find it right," said my gudesire. "Here, Dougal," said the laird, "gie Steenie a tuss of brandy till I count the siller and write the receipt." But they werena weel out of the room when Sir Robert gied a yellock that garred the castle rock. Back ran Dougal, in flew the liverymen, yell on yell gied the laird, ilk ane mair awful than the other. My gudesire knew not whether to stand or flee, but he ventured back into the parlour, where all was going hurdy-gurdy, naebody to say come in or gae out. Terribly the lad ran for cold water to his feet, and wine to cool his throat, and hell, 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 and his flames was aye the word in his mouth. They brought him water, and when they plunged his swollen feet into the tub, he cried out it was burning, and folks say that it did bubble and sparkle like a seething cauldron. He flung the cup at Dougal's head, and said he had given him blood instead of burgundy. And sure enough, the lass washed clotted blood off the carpet the next day. The jackanape they called Major Weir, it gibbered and cried as if it was mocking its master. My gudesire's head was like to turn. He forgot baith siller and receipt, and downstairs he banged. But as he ran, the shrieks came fainter and fainter. There was a deep-drawn shivering groan, and word gaed to the castle that the laird was dead. Well, away came my gudesire, with his finger in his mouth, and his best hope was that Dougal had seen the money bag and heard the laird speak of writing the receipt. The young laird, now Sir John, came from Edinburgh to see things put to rights. Sir John and his father never agreed weel. Sir John had been bred an advocate, and afterwards sat in the last Scots Parliament and voted for the Union, having gotten, it was thought, a rug of the compensations. If his father could have come out of his grave, he would have brained him for it on his own hearthstone. Some thought it was easier counting with the old rough knight than the fair-spoken youngin, but mair of that anon. Dougal MacCallum, poor body, neither grat nor grained, but gaed about the house, looking like a corpse, but directing, as was his duty, all the order of the grand funeral. Now Dougal looked aye waur and waur when night was coming, and was aye the last to gang to his bed. Wilk was in a little room just opposite the chamber of dais. Wilk his master occupied while he was doing, and where he now lay in state, as they called it, weel a day. The night before the funeral, Dougal could keep his own counsel nae longer. He came down with his proud spirit, and fairly asked old Hutcheon to sit in his room with him for an hour. When they were in the room, Dougal took a tass of brandy to himself, and gave another to Hutcheon, and wished him all health and long life, and said that for himself he wasna long for this world, for that every night since Sir Robert's death his silver call had sounded from the state chamber, just as it used to do at nights in his lifetime, to call Dougal to help to turn him in his bed. Dougal said that being alone with the dead on that floor of the tower, for naebody cared to wake Sir Robert at Gauntlet like another corpse, he had never dared to answer the call, but that now his conscience checked him for neglecting his duty. For though death breaks service, said MacCallum, it shall never weak my service to Sir Robert, and I will answer his next whistle, so be you will stand by me, Hutcheon. Hutcheon had nae will to the work, but he had stood by Dougal in battle and broil, and he would not fail him at this pinch. So doon the carle sat o'er a stoup of brandy, and Hutcheon, who was something of a clerk, would have read a chapter of the Bible, but Dougal would hear nothing but a blood of Davy Lindsay, which was the wear of preparation. When midnight came, and the house was quiet as the grave, sure enough the silver whistle sounded as sharp and shrill as if Sir Robert was blowing it, and up got the twa old serving men, and tottered into the room where the dead man lay. Hutcheon saw anew at the first glance, for there were torches in the room, which showed him the foul fiend in his ain shape, sitting on the laird's coffin, or he cooped as if he had been dead. He could not tell how long he lay in a trance at the door, but when he gathered himself, he cried on his neighbour, and getting nae answer raised the hoose, when Dougal was found lying dead within 2 steps of the bed where his master's coffin was placed. As for the whistle, it was gane ains and aye, but many a time was it heard at the top of the house on the Bartizan, and among the old chimneys and turrets where the howlets have their nests. Sir John hushed the matter up, and the funeral passed over without mair bogie work. But when all was o'er, and the laird was beginning to settle his affairs, every tenant was called up by his arrears, and my gudesire for the full sum that stood against him in the rental book. Weel, away he trots to the castle to tell his story, and there he is introduced to Sir John, sitting in his father's chair in deep mourning, with weepers and hanging cravat, and a small walking rapier by his side, instead of the old broadsword that had a hundredweight of steel about it, what with blade, chape, and basket hilt. I have heard the communing so often told over that I almost think I was there myself, though I couldna be born at the time. In fact, Alan, my companion, mimicked with a good deal of humour the flattering, conciliating tone of the tenant's address, and the hypocritical melancholy of the lad's reply. His grandfather, he said, had, while he spoke, his eyes fixed on the rental book, as if it were a mastiff dog that he was afraid would spring up and bite him. I wish you joy, sir, of the head seat, and the white loaf, and the bread lordship. Your father was a kind man to friends and followers. Muckle grace to you, Sir John, to fill his shoon, his boots, I should say, for he seldom wore shoon, unless it were mulls, when he had the gout. Ay, Steenie, quoth the laird, sighing deeply, and putting his napkin to his een. His was a sudden call, and he will be missed in the country. No time to set his house in order. Weel prepared, God would no doubt, which is the root of the matter, but left us behind a tangled hesp to wind, Steenie. Hum, hum, we mun go to business, Steenie. Much to do, and little time to do it in. Here he opened the fatal volume. I have heard of a thing they call Doomsday Book. I am clear it has been a rental of back-hanging tenants. Stephen, said Sir John, still in the same soft, sleek tone of voice. Stephen, Stevenson or Steenson, ye are down here for a year's rent behind the hand, due at last term. Stephen, please your honour, Sir John, I paid it to your father. Sir John, ye took a receipt then, doubtless, Stephen, and can produce it. Stephen, indeed, I hadna time on it like your honour, for nae sooner had I set down the siller, and just as his honour Sir Robert that's gane drew it went to count it and write out the receipt, he was ta'en with the pains that removed him. That was unlucky, said Sir John after a pause, but ye maybe paid it in the presence of somebody. I want but a talis qualis evidence, Stephen. I would go o'er strictly to work with no foreman. Stephen, truth, Sir John, there was naebody in the room but Dougal MacCallum, the butler. But as your honour kens, he has e'en followed his old master. Very unlucky again, Stephen, said Sir John, without altering his voice a single note. The man to whom ye paid the money is dead, and the man who witnessed the payment is dead too, and the siller which should have been to the fore is neither seen nor heard tell of in the repositories. How am I to believe all this? Stephen, I dinna ken, your honour, but there is a bit memorandum note of the very coins, for God help me, I had to borrow out of 20 purses, and I am sure that ilka man there set down will take his great oath for what purpose I borrowed the money. Sir John, I have little doubt ye borrowed the money, Steenie. It is the payment that I want to have proof of. Stephen, the siller mun be about the house, Sir John, and since your honour never got it, and his honour that was canna have ta'en it wi' him, maybe some of the family may have seen it. Sir John, we will examine the servants, Stephen. That is but reasonable. But lackey and lass and page and groom all denied stoutly that they had ever seen such a bag of money as my good sire described. Whatsoever he had unluckily not mentioned to any living soul of them his purpose of paying his rent. I, Queen, had noticed something under his arm, but she took it for the pipes. Sir John Redgauntlet ordered the servants out of the room, and then said to my gudesire, Now, Steenie, ye see ye have fair play, and as I have little doubt ye ken better where to find the siller than any other body, I beg in fair terms, and for your own sake, that you will end this fasherie, for Stephen, ye mun pay or flit. The Lord forgie your opinion, said Stephen, driven almost to his wits' end. I am an honest man. So am I, Stephen, said his honour, and so are all the folks in the house, I hope. But if there be a knave amongst us, it must be he that tells the story he cannot prove. He paused, and then added more sternly, If I understand your trick, sir, you want to take advantage of some malicious reports concerning things in this family, and particularly respecting my father's sudden death, thereby to cheat me out of the money, and perhaps take away my character by insinuating that I have received the rent I am demanding. Where do you suppose the money to be? I insist upon knowing. My good sire, so everything looked so muckle against him that he grew nearly desperate. However, he shifted from one foot to another, looked to every corner of the room, and made no answer. Speak out, sir, said the laird. assuming a look of his father's, a very particular ane which he had when he was angry. It seemed as if the wrinkles of his frown made that self-same fearful shape of a horse's shoe in the middle of his brow. "Speak out, sir. I will know your thoughts. Do you suppose that I have this money?" "Far be it from me to say so," said Stephen. "Do you charge any of my people with having taken it?" "I would be loath to charge them that may be innocent," said my good sir. "And if there be any one that is guilty, I have nae proof." "Somewhere the money must be, if there is a word of truth in your story," said Sir John. "I ask where you think it is, and demand a correct answer." "In hell, if you will have my thoughts of it," said my gudesire, driven to extremity. "In hell, with your father his jackanapes and his silver whistle." Down the stairs he ran, for the parlour was nae place for him after such a word, and he heard the laird swearing blood and wounds behind him, as fast as ever did Sir Robert, and roaring for the bailie and the baron officer. Away rode my gudesire to his chief creditor, him they called Laurie Laprec, to try if he could make anything out of him. But when he told his story, he got the worst word in his wame. Thief, beggar, and diva were the softest terms, and to the boot of these hard terms Laurie brought up the auld story of dipping his hand in the blood of God's saints, just as if a tenant could have helped riding with the laird, and that a laird like Sir Robert Redgauntlet. My gudesire was by this time far beyond the bounds of patience, and while he and Laurie were at deal speed the liars, he was one chancy enough to abuse the prake's doctrine as weel as the man, and said things that garred folks' flesh grew that heard them. He was nae just himsel, and he had lived wi' a wild set in his day. At last they parted, and my gudesire was to ride hame through the wood of Pitmurky. That is a foe of black ferrers, as they say. I ken the wood, but the ferrers may be black or white for what I can tell. At the entry of the wood there is a wild common, and on the edge of the common a little lonely change house, that was keepit then by an hostler wife. They should have called her Tibby Four, and there poor Steenie cried for a mutchkin of brandy, for he had had no refreshment the hale day. Tibby was earnest wi' him to take a bite of meat, but he couldna think of it, nor would he take his foot out of the stirrup, and took off the brandy wholly at twa draughts, and named a toast at each. The first was the memory of Sir Robert Redgauntlet, and may he never lie quiet in his grave till he had righted his poor bond tenant, and the second was a health to man's enemy, if he would but get him back the puck of Sillick, or tell him what came of it, for he saw the hale world was like to regard him as a thief and a cheat, and he took that worse than even the ruin of his house and hold. On he rode, little caring where. It was a dark night turned, and the trees made it yet darker, and he let the beast take its ain road through the wood, when all of a sudden, from tired and wearied that it was before, the nag began to spring and flee and stand, that my gudesire could hardly keep the saddle. Upon the whilk, a horseman, suddenly riding up beside him, said, "That's a little beast of yours, friend. Will you sell him?" So saying, he touched the horse's neck with his riding wand, and it fell into its old hey-ho of a stumbling trot. "But his spunk's soon out of him, I think," continued the stranger, "and that is like many a man's courage that thinks he would do great things." My gudesire scarce listened to this, but spurred his horse with "Good e'en to you, friend." But it's like the stranger was ane that doesna like to yield his point, for ride as Steenie liked, he was aye beside him at the self same pace. At last my gudesire, Steenie Steenson, grew half angry, and to say the truth, half feared. "What is it that you want with me, friend?" he said. "If ye be a robber, I have nae money. If ye be a leal man wanting company, I have nae heart to mirth or speaking, and if ye want to ken the road, I scarce ken it mysell." "If you will tell me your grief," said the stranger, "I am one that, though I have been sair misca'd in the world, am the only hand for helping my friends." So my good sire, to ease his ain heart more than from any hope of help, told him the story from beginning to end. "It's a hard pinch," said the stranger, "but I think I can help you. If you could lend me the money, sir, and take a long day, I ken nae other help on earth," said my good sire. "But there may be some under the earth," said the stranger. "Come, I'll be frank wi' ye. I could lend you the money on bond, but you would maybe scruple my terms. Now, I can tell you that your old laird is disturbed in his grave by your curses and the wailing of your family, and if you dare venture to go to see him, he will give you the receipt." My good sire's hair stood on end at this proposal, but he thought his companion might be some humoursome chield that was trying to frighten him, and might end with lending him the money. Besides, he was bold with brandy and desperate with distress, and he said he had courage to go to the gate of hell and a step farther for that receipt. The stranger laughed. Weel, they rode on through the thickest of the wood, when all of a sudden the horse stopped at the door of a great house, and but that he knew the place was 10 miles off, my father would have thought he was at Redgauntlet Castle. They rode into the outer courtyard, through the muckle folding yetts, and underneath the old portcullis, and the whole front of the house was lighted, and there were pipes and fiddles, and as much dancing and deray within as used to be at Sir Robert's house at Pace and Yule and such high seasons. They lap up, and my good sire, as seemed to him, fastened his horse to the very ring he had tied him to that morning when he gaed to wait on the young Sir John. "God," said my good sire, "if Sir Robert's death be but a dream." He knocked at the hall door just as he was wont, and his old acquaintance, Dougal MacCallum, just after his wont too, came to open the door, and said, "Piper Steenie, hiya there, lad. Sir Robert has been crying for you." My good sire was like a man in a dream. He looked for the stranger, but he was gane for the time. At last he just tried to say, "Ah, a Dougal driver, are you living? I thought you had been dead." "Never fash yourself wi' me," said Dougal, "but look to yourself, and see you take naething from anybody here, neither meat, drink, or siller, except the receipt that is your ain." So saying, he led the way out through the halls and trances that were well kenned to my good sire, and into the old oak parlour, and there was as much singing of profane songs and barrelling of red wine and blasphemy and skullduggery as had ever been in Redgauntlet Castle when it was at the blithest. But Lord take us in keeping! What a set of ghastly revellers there were that sat around that table! My good sire kenned many that had long before gane to their place, for often had he piped to the most part in the hall of Redgauntlet. There was the fierce Middleton, and the dissolute Rothers, and the crafty Lauderdale, and Dalyell with his bald head and a beard to his girdle, and Earlshall with Cameron's blood on his hand, and wild Bonshaw that tied blessed Mr. Cargill's limbs till the blood sprung, and Dumbarton Douglas that twice turned traitor bate the country and king. there was the bloody advocate MacKenzie, who for his worldly wit and wisdom had been to the rest as a god. And there was Claverhouse, as beautiful as when he lived, with his long, dark, curled locks streaming down over his laced buff coat, and with his left hand always on his right spool blade to hide the wound that the silver bullet had made. He sat apart from them all and looked at them with a melancholy, haughty countenance. Others hallooed and sang and laughed that the room rang, but their smiles were fearfully contorted from time to time, and their laughter passed into such wild sounds as made my gudesire's very nails grow blue and chilled the marrow in his bones. They that waited at the table were just the wicked serving men and troopers that had done their work and cruel bidding on earth. There was the lang lad of the Nethertown that helped to take Argyle, and the bishop's summoner that they called the Deal's rattlebag, and the wicked guardsmen in their laced coats, and the savage Highland Amorites that shed blood like water, and many a proud serving man, haughty of heart and bloody of hand, cringing to the rich and making them wickeder than they would be, grinding the poor to powder when the rich had broken them to fragments, and many more were coming and ganging, as busy in their vacation as if they had been alive. Sir Robert Redgauntlet, in the midst of all this fearful riot, cried with a voice like thunder on Steenie Piper to come to the boardhead, where he was sitting, his legs stretched out before him, and swathed up with flannel, with his holster pistols aside him, while the great broadsword rested against his chair, just as my gudesire had seen him the last time upon earth. The very cushion for the jackanape was close to him, but the creature itself was not there. It was not its hour, it's likely, for he heard them say as he came forward, "Is not the Major come yet?" And another answered, "The jackanape will be here betimes the morn." And when my gudesire came forward, Sir Robert, or his ghaist, or the devil in his likeness, said, "Well, Piper, are ye settled with my son for the year's run?" With much ado, my father got breath to say that Sir John would not settle without his honour's receipt. "Ye shall have that for a tune of the pipe, Steenie," said the appearance of Sir Robert. "Play us up, Weel Huddled Lucky." Now, this was a tune my gudesire learned for a warlock that heard it when they were worshipping Satan at their meetings, and my gudesire had sometimes played it at the ranting suppers in Redgauntlet Castle, but never very willingly, and now he grew cold at the very name of it, and said for excuse he had na his pipes wi' him. "MacCallum, ye limb of Beelzebub," said the faithful Sir Robert, "bring Steenie the pipes that I am keeping for him." MacCallum brought a pair of pipes, might have served the piper of Donald of the Isles, but he gave my gudesire a nudge as he offered them, and looking secretly and closely, Steenie saw that the chanter was of steel and heated to a white heat, so he had fair warning not to trust his fingers with it. So he excused himself again, and said he was faint and frightened, and had not wind enough to fill the bag. "Then ye mun eat and drink, Steenie," said the figure, "for we do little else here, and it's ill speaking between a foeman and a fasting." Now these were the very words that the bloody Earl of Douglas said to keep the king's messenger in hand, while he cut the head of MacLennan of Bombay at the Three Castle, and put Steenie mair and mair on his guard. So he spoke up like a man, and said he came neither to eat nor drink nor make minstrelsy, but simply for his aim, to ken what was come of the money he had paid, and to get a discharge for it. And he was so stout-hearted by this time that he charged Sir Robert for conscience's sake. He had no power to say the holy name, and as he hoped for peace and rest, to spread no snares for him, but just to give him his ain. The appearance gnashed its teeth and laughed, but it took from a large pocket-book the receipt, and handed it to Steenie. "There is your receipt, ye pitiful cur, and for the money, my dog whelp of a son, I go look for it in the cat's cradle." My gudesire uttered mony thanks, and was about to retire, when Sir Robert roared aloud, "Stop, thou sack-doodling son of a... I am not done with thee. Here, we do nothing for nothing, and you must return on this very day 12-month to pay your master the homage that you owe me for my protection." My father's tongue was loosed of a suddenty, and he said aloud, "I refer myself to God's pleasure, and not to yours." He had no sooner uttered the word than all was dark around him, and he sank on the earth with such a sudden shock that he lost both breath and sense. How long Steenie lay there he could not tell, but when he came to himself, he was lying in the old kirkyard of Redgauntlet Parishin, just at the door of the family aisle, and the scutcheon of the old knight Sir Robert hanging over his head. There was a deep morning fog on grass and gravestone around him, and his horse was feeding quietly beside the minister's twa cows. Steenie would have thought the whole was a dream, but he had the receipt in his hand, fairly written and signed by the old laird. Only the last letters of his name were a little disorderly, written like one seized with sudden pain. Sorely troubled in his mind, he left that dreary place, rode through the mist of Redgauntlet Castle, and with much ado he got speech of the laird. "Well, ye deaver bankrupt," was the first word. "Have ye brought me my rent?" "No," answered my gudesire, "I have not, but I have brought your honour Sir Robert's receipt for it." "How, sirrah, Sir Robert's receipt? You told me he had not given you one." "Will your honour please to see it, that bit line is right?" Sir John looked at every line and at every letter with much attention, and at last at the date, which my gudesire had not observed. "From my appointed place," he read, "this 25th of November." "What? That is yesterday. Villain, thou must have gone to hell for this." "I got it from your honour's father. Whether he be in heaven or hell, I know not," said Steenie. "I will debate you for a warlock to the Privy Council," said Sir John. "I will send you to your master the devil with the help of a tar barrel and a torch." "I intend to debate my soul to the presbytery," said Steenie, "and tell them all I have seen last night, work of things fitter for them to judge of than a borrel man like me." Sir John paused, composed himself, and desired to hear the full history, and my gudesire told it him from point to point as I have told it you, neither more nor less. Sir John was silent again for a long time, and at last he said very composedly, "Steenie, this story of yours concerns the honour of many a noble family besides mine, and if it be a leasing making to keep yourself out of my danger, the least you can expect is to have a red-hot iron driven through your tongue, and that will be as bad as scalding your fingers wi' a red-hot chanter. But yet it may be true, Steenie, and if the money cast up, I shall not know what to think of it. But where shall we find the cat's cradle? There are cats enough about the old house, but I think they kitten without the ceremony of bed or cradle." "We were best ask Hutcheon," said my gudesire. "He kens all the odd corners about as well as another serving man that is now gane, and that I would not like to name." Weel, Hutcheon, when he was asked, told them that a ruinous turret lang disused next to the clock house, only accessible by a ladder, for the opening was on the outside, above the battlements, was called of old the Cat's Cradle. "There will I go immediately," said Sir John, and he took, with what purpose heaven kens, one of his father's pistols from the hall table, where they had lain since the night he died, and hastened to the battlements. It was a dangerous place to climb, for the ladder was old and frail, and wanted ane or two rounds. However, up got Sir John, and entered at the turret door, where his body stopped the only little light that was in the bit turret. Something flees at him wi' a vengeance. Mayst dang him back, or bang gave the knight's pistol, and Hutcheon that held the ladder, and my gudesire that stood beside him, hears a loud skelloch. A minute after, Sir John flings the body of the jackanapes down to them, and cries that the cellar is fun, and that they should come up and help him. And there was the bag of cellar sure enough, and many other thing besides that had been missing for many a day. And Sir John, when he arrived at the turret wheel, led my gudesire into the dining parlour, and took him by the hand, and spoke kindly to him, and said he was sorry he should have doubted his word, and that he would hereafter be a good master to him, to make amends. "And now, Steenie," said Sir John, "although this vision of yours tends, on the whole, to my father's credit as an honest man, that he should, even after his death, desire to see justice done to a poor man like you, yet you are sensible that ill-dispositioned men might make bad constructions upon it concerning his soul's health. So I think we had better lay the hale dirdum on that ill-deedy creature made your weir, and say naething about your dream in the wood of Pitmurky. You had ta'en o'er muckle brandy to be very certain about anything, and Steenie this receipt." His hand shook while he held it out. "It's but a queer kind of document, and we will do best, I think, to put it quietly in the fire." "Od, but for as queer as it is, it's all the voucher I have for my rent," said my gudesire, who was afraid, it may be, of losing the benefit of Sir Robert's discharge. "I will bear the contents to your credit in the rental book, and give you a discharge under my own hand," said Sir John, "and that on the spot. And, Steenie, if you can hold your tongue about this matter, you shall sit from this time downward at an easier rent." "Mony thanks to your honour," said Steenie, who saw easily in what corner the wind was. "Doubtless I will be conformable to all your honour's commands, only I would willingly speak with some powerful minister on the subject, for I do not like the sort of summons of appointment which your honour's father—" "Do not call the phantom my father," said Sir John, interrupting him. "Weel, then, the thing that was so like him," said my gudesire. "He spoke of my coming back to see him this time 12-month, and it's a weight on my conscience." "Ah, weel, then," said Sir John, "if ye be so much distrust in mind, ye may speak to our minister of the parish. He is a douce man, regards the honour of our family, and the mair that he may look for some patronage from me." With that, my father readily agreed that the receipt should be burnt, and the laird threw it into the chimney with his ain hand. Burn it would not for them, though, but away it flew up the lum, wi' a lang train of sparks at its tail, and a hissing noise like a squib. My gudesire gaed down to the manse, and the minister, when he had heard the story, said it was his real opinion that though my gudesire had gone very far in tampering with dangerous matters, yet, as he had refused the devil's arrows, for such was the offer of meat and drink, and had refused to do homage by piping at his bidding, he hoped that, if he held a circumspect walk hereafter, Satan could take little advantage by what was come and gain. And, indeed, my gudesire, of his ain accord, long forswore both the pipes and the brandy. It was not even till the year was out and the fatal day passed, that he would so much as take the fiddle or drink a scabbard or tippenny. Sir John made up his story about the jackanape as he liked himself, and some believe till this day there was no more in the matter than the filching nature of the brew. Indeed, you know into some to thread that it was nane of the old enemy that Dougal and Fitchian saw in the laird's room, but only that one chancy creature, the Major, capering on the coffin, and that as to the blowing on the laird's whistle that was heard after he was dead, the filthy brute could do that as well as the laird himself, if no better. But heaven kens the truth. Will first came out by the minister's wife, after Sir John and her ain goodman were baith in the moulds, and then my gudesire, who was failed in his limbs, but not in his judgment or memory, at least nothing to speak of, was obliged to tell the real narrative to his friends for the credit of his good name. He might else have been charged for a warlock. The shades of evening were growing thicker around us as my conductor finished his long narrative with this moral: "Ye see, Birkie, it is nae chancy thing to take a stranger traveller for a guide when you're in an uncouth land." "I should not have made that inference," said I. "Your grandfather's adventure was fortunate for himself, whom it saves from ruin and distress, and fortunate for his landlord." "Ay, but they had baith to sup the suss of it sooner or later," said wondering Willie. "What was frusted was nae forgiven. Sir John died before he was much over threescore, and it was just like a moment's illness. And for my gudesire, though he departed in fullness of life, yet there was my father, a young man of 45, fell down betwixt the stilts of his plough, and raised never again, and left nae bairn but me, a poor, sightless, fatherless, motherless creature, could neither work nor want. Things gaed well enough at first, for Sir Redwald Redgauntlet, the only son of Sir John, and the eye of old Sir Robert, and ways me, the last of the honourable house, took the farm off our hands and brought me into his household to have care of me. My head never settled since I lost him, and if I say another word about it, deal apart will I have the harp to play the night. Look out, my gentle chap," he resumed in a different tone. "You should see the lights of Buckenburn Glen by this time." End of Wandering Willie's Tale.